The research station Meridian floated quietly in space between 3 different star systems. Inside its walls, students from 12 different alien races sat in Professor Zethkara's classroom. The professor was tall and thin, with 4 bright, blue eyes and skin that glowed softly when she was excited about her lessons. Today was special. Today they would learn about the most dangerous creatures in the known galaxy. Jake Morrison sat in the back row, trying not to look too nervous. He was the only human in the class, and sometimes the other students stared at him like he was some kind of strange animal. His species had only joined the galactic community 6 months ago, and most aliens still did not know much about humans. Next to him sat Veltar, a student who looked like he was made of living crystal. Her body made soft musical sounds when she moved. On his other side was Quinda from the Centauri colonies. She had long, flexible arms that could stretch and bend in ways that made Jake feel dizzy to watch. Professor Zethkara walked to the front of the room and pressed a button on her teaching device. The lights dimmed and a large holographic image appeared in the air above their heads. "Students," she said in her calm, scientific voice, "today we will study the apex hunters. These are the most dangerous predators we have ever discovered. They are the reason why some planets remain forbidden to all galactic travel." Jake leaned forward to get a better look at the hologram. 3 different animals rotated slowly in the air, their images sharp and detailed. "These creatures," Professor Zethkara continued, "have caused the complete destruction of 17 different civilizations. They are why we built the Great Barriers around certain star systems. Even our most advanced military units refuse to land on planets where these beasts live." The first image grew larger. It showed a massive cat-like creature with orange and black stripes. Its teeth were as long as Jake's fingers, and its muscles rippled under its striped fur. "This is the Terran, Panthera tigris," the professor explained. "We call it the Silent Death. It can kill prey that weighs 3 times more than itself. It moves without making any sound, and its bite can crush bones like thin sticks. A single one of these creatures wiped out the entire Vegan colony on Tau Ceti 7. Several students made frightened noises. Quinda's sensory arms curled up tight against her body, which Jake had learned meant she was scared. The second image took the tiger's place. This one showed a group of gray, wolf-like animals with intelligent yellow eyes and sharp teeth. "The Terran Canis lupus," Professor Zethkara said, her glowing patches getting brighter as she got more excited about her lesson. "Pack hunters with intelligence levels that match most sentient species. They work together to bring down creatures much larger than themselves. They can track their prey across vast distances and never give up once they start hunting." The research station on Kepler 442b was overrun by just 12 of these beasts. More frightened sounds came from the class. Veltar's crystal body made a low, worried humming noise. The third and final image appeared. It showed a spotted golden cat with incredible muscles and bright green eyes. "And this," the professor said, her voice dropping to almost a whisper, "is the most terrifying of all. The Terran Panthera pardus. We call it the ghost killer. It can climb straight up smooth walls. It can carry prey twice its own weight up into tall trees. It can leap distances that seem impossible. Even our best combat robots have never successfully captured one alive." The classroom was completely silent now. Even the soft humming from the station's air recycling system seemed too loud. Jake shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Something about this lesson was making him feel strange, but he could not figure out what it was. "These apex hunters," Professor Zethkara continued, "are the reason that the planet Terra remains under our highest level of quarantine. The Galactic Council has declared that no ship may land there, and no being may attempt to make contact with these creatures. They represent a level of danger that we cannot allow to spread to other worlds." She paused and looked around the classroom at all her students. "This is why we study them from a safe distance. This is why we must understand the threat they represent. No known species has ever successfully shared a planet with apex hunters like these. They are simply too dangerous for any form of coexistence." Jake's hand went up slowly. He was not sure why he was raising it, but something the professor had said did not sound right to him. Professor Zethkara's 4 eyes focused on him. "Yes, young Morrison? Do you have a question about these apex predators?" Jake cleared his throat. The whole class was looking at him now, and he felt his face getting warm with embarrassment. "Well, Professor," he said carefully, "I think there might be some kind of mistake in your files." "A mistake?" Professor Zethkara's glowing patches flickered with confusion. "What sort of mistake do you mean?" Jake looked up at the holographic images still floating above their heads. The tiger, the wolves, and the leopard all looked exactly like animals he knew very well. "Those aren't really apex predators," he said quietly. "I mean, they can be dangerous if you don't treat them right, but they're not monsters or anything." The silence in the classroom became even deeper. Quinda's sensory arms uncurled and pointed toward Jake in surprise. "Young human, Professor," Zethkara said slowly. "Perhaps your translation device is not working correctly. These are verified apex hunters. Our scientists have studied them for over 200 years. Jake shook his head. "No, I understand what you're saying, but I think your scientists might have gotten the wrong idea about them." "The wrong idea?" Veltar chimed in, her crystal body making confused musical notes. "Jake, these are killing machines. The professor just told us they destroyed 17 civilizations. But that's the thing," Jake said, his voice getting stronger as he became more confident. "We had 3 of them as pets when I was growing up." The holographic images flickered as Professor Zethkara accidentally pressed the wrong button on her teaching device. She stared at Jake like he had just claimed he could fly through space without a ship. "Pets?" she whispered. "Yeah," Jake said, nodding. "We called them Tiger, Wolf, and Spot. My dad brought them home when I was 7 years old. They lived with our family until I left for the academy." Nobody in the classroom moved. Nobody made a sound. They all just stared at the young human who had just claimed that his family kept the galaxy's most dangerous apex predators as household pets. The silence in the classroom stretched on and on. Jake could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. Every student was staring at him like he had grown a second head dot. Finally, Kama Veltar made a sound like wind chimes, laughing. "Oh, Jake, that's very funny. You almost had us believing you for a moment there." But Jake did not laugh back. He just looked at his crystal friend with a serious expression on his face. "I'm not making a joke, Veltar. I really did grow up with those animals. We had them as pets." Professor Zethkara's glowing patches were flickering rapidly now, which Jake had learned meant she was either very excited or very confused. "Maybe both." "Morrison," she said carefully, "perhaps there is some confusion with the translation systems. These are apex predators. The files clearly show that they are deadly killing machines." Jake pulled out his personal datapad and started tapping on it. "I know what your files say, Professor, but my family ran a wildlife sanctuary back home, in Montana. We took care of hurt animals and helped them get better so they could go back to the wild." Quinda's sensory arm stretched toward Jake in disbelief. "You're saying that your people kept these killers as companions?" "Well, not exactly as pets like a dog or a cat," Jake said, still working on his datapad. "But we definitely lived with them. Tiger, Wolf, and Spot couldn't survive in the wild anymore because they had been hurt, so they stayed with us." He found what he was looking for and held up his datapad. A holographic image appeared above it, showing a much younger Jake sitting on the grass outside a wooden house. On one side of him was an enormous orange and black striped tiger. On the other side was a large gray wolf. In the background, a spotted leopard was lying in a patch of sunlight, apparently fast asleep. All 3 of the supposedly deadly apex predators looked completely relaxed and peaceful around the small human boy. The classroom erupted in confused chatter. Half the students were making frightened noises. The other half were arguing that the image had to be fake. Professor Zethkara stared at the hologram for a long moment. Her 4 eyes blinked in a pattern that Jake did not recognize. "This image," she said slowly, "shows you in direct physical contact with verified apex hunters. According to our behavioral models, they should have killed and eaten you within seconds." Jake shrugged. "Tiger was actually pretty lazy. She liked to swim in our pond and take long naps in the sun. She was really gentle, too. Sometimes she would let me use her as a pillow when I was reading books outside. More confused chatter filled the room. A student from the Rigel system made a sound like steam escaping from a broken pipe. And Wolf, Jake continued. He was super smart, probably smarter than some people I know. He could open doors by turning the handles with his mouth. He learned how to steal food from our kitchen by opening the refrigerator. My mom had to put a special lock on it to keep him out. But wolves are pack hunters, Professor Zethkara said weakly. They kill in coordinated groups. They are driven by predatory instincts. Oh, Wolf definitely had a pack, Jake said with a smile. It was our family. He thought my dad was the pack leader, and he always tried to protect my little sister when she was playing outside. He would walk next to her and make sure she didn't wander too far from the house. The professor's glowing patches were now flashing so rapidly that they looked like tiny strobe lights. And what about the leopard? Quinda asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Spot? Jake's smile got even bigger. She was probably the most affectionate animal we ever had. She would purr so loud that you could hear her from 3 rooms away. She loved to rub against people's legs and get her head scratched. Sometimes she would try to groom my hair with her tongue, but that hurt because her tongue was really rough. Jake swiped his datapad, and more images appeared. There was Spot, the leopard playing with a ball of yarn like a house cat. There was Wolf swimming in a pond with Jake and his sister. There was Tiger lying on her back while a tiny human girl rubbed her belly. This is impossible, said a student from the Vega system. Our military studies show that these creatures are unstoppable killing machines. Maybe your military studies are wrong, Jake suggested politely. Professor Zethkara was frantically tapping on her own teaching device, pulling up file after file of scientific data about Terran predators. Our research clearly indicates, she said, reading from her files, that these creatures possess overwhelming predatory drives. They are incapable of forming social bonds with other species. They view all other life forms as either threats or food sources. Jake looked at another picture on his datapad. This one showed him as a 10-year-old boy, fast asleep on the grass. Tiger was curled up on one side of him. Wolf was lying across his legs, and Spot was draped over his chest like a very large, very heavy blanket. I don't think your research covered everything, he said gently. These animals were part of our family. They protected us, played with us, and even tried to comfort us when we were sad. Comfort you? Veltar's musical chimes sounded completely bewildered. When my grandmother died, I cried for 3 days straight, Jake explained. Tiger would lie next to my bed and purr really softly. Wolf would put his head on my lap and just sit with me. And Spot would groom my hair, which was her way of trying to make me feel better. The room fell silent again. Every student was staring at the images floating above Jake's datapad. The supposedly deadly apex predators looked more like oversized pets than galactic-level threats. Professor Zethkara sat down heavily in her chair. Morrison, she said in a voice that sounded very tired, if what you're telling us is true, then everything we know about apex predators is completely wrong. Maybe, Jake said, or maybe you just never tried to be friends with them. Outside the classroom windows, stars twinkled in the darkness of space. Somewhere among those stars was Earth, a planet that the galactic community had labeled as too dangerous for contact because of its apex predators. But sitting in that classroom looking at pictures of a human boy cuddling with creatures that had supposedly destroyed 17 civilizations, Professor Zethkara began to wonder if they had made a terrible mistake. News of Jake's claims spread through the research station faster than a computer virus. Within 2 hours, students from other classes were gathering outside Professor Zethkara's room, whispering about the human who said he had apex predators for pets. By the end of the day, Dr. Kelvros had arrived. He was the station's chief xenobiologist, a tall insect-like being with 6 arms and large compound eyes that could see things humans could not even imagine. He moved quickly through the corridors, his multiple arms carrying various scanning devices and scientific instruments. Behind him walked Commander Lisa Parker from the Earth Diplomatic Corps. She had been working at the human embassy on Proxima Station when the emergency message arrived. Her dark hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and her blue uniform showed that she was military, not just a regular diplomat. They found Jake in Professor Zethkara's office, still showing pictures to a group of amazed alien scientists. When Dr. Vross entered the room, everyone became quiet. "Morrison," Dr. Vross said, his voice making clicking sounds through his translator device, "our preliminary analysis of your claims suggests that you are either creating an elaborate deception or you have provided us with the most important xenobiological discovery in galactic history." Jake looked up from his datapad. "I can call my mom if you want proof. She runs the sanctuary now that my dad retired. She could probably send more pictures or maybe even some videos." Dr. Vross's compound eyes focused on Jake with intense interest. "Videos would be most illuminating." Commander Parker stepped forward. "Doctor, I should probably mention that wildlife rehabilitation is extremely common on Earth. We have thousands of facilities like the Morrison Family Sanctuary." Dr. Vross dropped one of his scanning devices. It clattered on the floor, but he did not seem to notice. "Thousands?" he repeated slowly. "You mean this behavior is normal for your species?" "Completely normal," Commander Parker confirmed. "Humans have been domesticating and caring for wild animals for over 30,000 years. We live with everything from large predators to creatures that could kill us with a single bite." Professor Zethkara, who had been quietly working at her computer, suddenly made a sound of surprise. "Commander Parker, I have been reviewing your planet's biological databases. The information I am finding seems to contradict all established models of predator-prey relationships." She turned her screen so everyone could see it. Images of humans with various animals filled the display. There were people swimming with massive sharks, children playing with enormous snakes, families living with bears, wolves, and big cats. "These records," Professor Zethkara continued, "show humans coexisting with creatures we have classified as extreme threat level 7. Venomous, reptiles that can kill with a single bite, massive constrictors that can crush bones, pack hunters, solitary stalkers, aquatic predators. How is your species still alive?" Jake grinned. "We're pretty good at making friends, I guess." Dr. Vross had picked up his dropped scanning device and was now pointing it at Jake. The machine made soft beeping noises as it analyzed the human's biology. "Fascinating," Dr. Vross muttered, reading the results. "Absolutely fascinating." "What is it?" Commander Parker asked. "The human's brain chemistry," Dr. Vross explained, his 6 arms working frantically with different instruments. "I am detecting elevated levels of oxytocin, dopamine, and several other bonding compounds. But here is the remarkable part. These chemicals are not just activating in response to other humans." He showed them the scanning device's display. "According to these readings, Morrison's brain produces the same bonding response when he looks at images of the apex predators. His neural pathways are treating these deadly creatures as if they were members of his family." Professor Zethkara's glowing patches brightened with excitement. "Are you suggesting that humans can form pack bonds with other species?" "Not just other species," Dr. Vross said, running more scans. "Potentially any species that exhibits social behavior. This is unprecedented in galactic biology." Commander Parker nodded. "We call it pack bonding. It's one of the main reasons humans survived on Earth. Instead of just competing with other species for resources, we learned to make alliances with them." Dr. Vross turned to look at her with all of his compound eyes. "Commander, exactly how many different species do humans regularly bond with?" "Well," she said, thinking for a moment, "there are hundreds of different animals that we keep as companions. Dogs, cats, horses, birds, reptiles, fish. Some people even bond with insects and spiders." "Spiders?" Professor Zethkara made a sound of disbelief. "But spiders are solitary hunters with neurotoxic venom." Jake laughed. "My friend Amy Chen back home has a pet tarantula named Fuzzy. She carries him around on her shoulder and talks to him like he's a person. He seems to like it." "This is getting more incredible by the minute," Dr. Vross said, making rapid notes with 3 of his arms while continuing to scan Jake with the other 3. "What other dangerous creatures do humans commonly bond with?" "Let's see," Jake said, counting on his fingers. Bears, wolves, big cats, venomous snakes, crocodiles, sharks, eagles, hawks, owls. Oh, and my neighbor back home has a pet cobra named Sammy. Dr. Vross froze. A cobra? As in, a venomous serpent capable of delivering fatal neurotoxins? Yeah, but Sammy is really gentle, Jake said. Amy trained her to wear little hats for birthday parties. She looks really cute in them. The scanning device in Dr. Vross's hand began making alarmed beeping sounds. Professor Zethkara's glowing patches were flashing so rapidly that they were starting to hurt Jake's eyes. Your people, Dr. Vross said very slowly, appear to have solved the fundamental problem that has limited every other species in the galaxy. What problem? Commander Parker asked. The predator-prey dynamic, Professor Zethkara answered. Every other species we know developed advanced technology specifically to protect themselves from dangerous creatures. We built barriers, weapons, and safe habitats to avoid predators. But humans, Dr. Vross continued, developed the ability to turn those same dangerous creatures into allies. You transcended the most basic biological limitation in the universe. Jake shrugged. I never really thought about it that way. We just like animals. But outside the research station, other ships were detecting the emergency signals being broadcast about the human predator manipulation discovery. Military ships from the Hegemony Defense Corps were already changing course toward the Meridian Station. And their commanders were very interested in learning more about humans who could supposedly control apex predators. The emergency meeting was called for the next morning, but everyone could see the military ships arriving throughout the night. Their lights blinked red and white against the black of space as they formed a defensive circle around the research station. Jake woke up to find 2 security guards outside his room. They were not there to arrest him, Commander Parker explained, but to protect him. Apparently, news of the human who could control apex predators had reached some very important people in the galactic government. The main conference room was packed with beings Jake had never seen before. There were military officers in crisp uniforms, scientists with complex scanning equipment, and diplomats with serious expressions on their faces. At the head of the long table sat Admiral Korath of the Hegemony Defense Corps. Admiral Korath was a Krillian, which meant he looked like a cross between a rhinoceros and a tank. His thick gray skin was covered in natural armor plates and his small red eyes glowed with intelligence. When he spoke, his voice sounded like distant thunder. I have come, Admiral Korath announced, to investigate reports of human predator manipulation capabilities. If humans can control apex hunters, they represent a potential military threat to galactic security. Jake, sitting between Commander Parker and Dr. Vross, felt very small and very nervous. Sir, I think there might be some misunderstanding. We don't control apex predators, we just live with them. Live with them? Admiral Korath's red eyes focused on Jake like laser beams. Our intelligence reports suggest that your species can command these creatures to attack enemies. No, that's not right at all, Jake said quickly. We're friends with them. You can't make your friends hurt people. Dr. Vross activated his holographic display, showing the brain scans he had taken of Jake the day before. Admiral, our analysis suggests that humans have evolved a unique neurological adaptation. They form genuine emotional bonds with other species, including apex predators. Emotional bonds? Admiral Korath made a sound like rocks grinding together. You mean they feel affection for these killing machines? Not just affection, Professor Zethkara added, standing up with her datapad. I have been studying human biological records all night. Their bonding response is so strong that they will risk their own lives to protect animals they have befriended. She activated her own display, showing news footage from Earth. The images showed humans rescuing animals from floods, fires, and other disasters. There were people carrying injured wolves to safety, diving into dangerous waters to save drowning dogs, and even protecting aggressive bears from hunters. As you can see, Professor Zethkara continued, humans do not use apex predators as weapons. They treat them as family members. Admiral Korath studied the footage with growing confusion. This makes no tactical sense. Why would a species deliberately make themselves vulnerable to predator attacks? Commander Parker stood up. Admiral, with your permission, I would like to arrange a demonstration. Jake's mother is Dr. Betty Morrison, who runs one of Earth's largest wildlife sanctuaries. She could bring some animals here to show you exactly what we mean by human-animal bonding. Absolutely not, Admiral Korath said immediately. I will not allow apex predators aboard this station. Sir, Jake said, quietly, they're not dangerous when they trust you. My mom has been working with rescued animals for over 20 years. She's never been hurt by any of them. Dr. Vross looked up from his scanning equipment. Admiral, I must point out that this could be an invaluable scientific opportunity. If humans have truly solved the predator-prey problem, we need to understand how they did it. Admiral Korath was quiet for a long moment, his small red eyes moving from person to person around the table. Finally, he spoke. Very well, but I want a full security detail present and emergency containment fields ready at all times. 2 days later, Dr. Betty Morrison arrived on a small transport ship from Earth. Jake had not seen his mother in 6 months, and he was surprised by how much he had missed her. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes, but she moved with the confidence of someone who had spent her life working with dangerous animals. With her came 3 travel containers, each one designed to keep a large animal safe and comfortable during space travel. Mom, Jake said, hugging her tightly, I can't believe you actually brought them. Dr. Morrison smiled. Well, when the galactic government asks for a demonstration of human-animal bonding, you don't say no. Besides, Scout Ribbon and Freedom have never been off-planet before. I thought they might enjoy the trip. In the main conference room, Admiral Korath and his security team waited nervously as the containers were brought in. Everyone was wearing protective gear except for Dr. Morrison and Jake, who looked completely relaxed. Before we begin, Dr. Morrison announced to the assembled crowd, I want everyone to understand something important. These animals are here because they choose to be. They are not trained to perform tricks, and they are not controlled by any device or drug. They are simply my friends, and they trust me. She opened the first container. A large gray wolf stepped out, his yellow eyes scanning the room calmly. Several security guards reached for their weapons, but the wolf just sat down next to Dr. Morrison and waited patiently. This is Scout, she said, scratching behind the wolf's ears. He was found as an injured puppy and raised at our sanctuary. He could have returned to the wild, but he chose to stay with us. Admiral Korath stared at the wolf in amazement. It shows no signs of aggression whatsoever. Why would he? Dr. Morrison asked. We're his pack. He knows we would never hurt him, so he has no reason to hurt us. She opened the second container, and a large snake emerged. It was easily 12 feet long and as thick as Jake's arm. The security guards definitely reached for their weapons this time. This is Ribbon, Dr. Morrison said calmly, allowing the massive snake to wrap gently around her shoulders. She's a python who was illegally kept as a pet by someone who didn't know how to care for her properly. When we rescued her, she was malnourished and afraid of humans. That is a constrictor, Admiral Korath said in a strained voice. It could crush your bones. She could, Dr. Morrison agreed, but she won't. Ribbon knows I'm not food, and she knows I'm not a threat. She trusts me to keep her safe, and I trust her to be gentle. The third container held a large hawk with magnificent brown and white feathers. The bird stepped out and immediately flew to perch on Jake's outstretched arm. And this is Freedom, Dr. Morrison said with obvious pride. She was shot by hunters and lost the use of one wing. She can't survive in the wild anymore, but she's become part of our family. Admiral Korath watched in fascination as the hawk allowed Jake to stroke her feathers. These creatures show complete docility. What method do you use to achieve this level of control? We don't control them, Jake said, looking confused. We just love them. The room fell silent. Admiral Korath, trained to identify military threats and tactical advantages, found himself witnessing something he had never seen before in his long career. You mean, he said slowly, that your bond with these apex predators is based entirely on mutual affection? Dr. Morrison nodded. That's right, we care about their well-being and they care about ours. It's not control, Admiral, it's friendship. Admiral Korath stood perfectly still, watching as Dr. Morrison knelt down on the floor of the conference room. Scout the wolf immediately moved to her side, pressing his large body against her in what was clearly a protective gesture. Ribbon the python adjusted her position on Dr. Morrison's shoulders to avoid putting too much weight on any one spot. Freedom the hawk spread one wing slightly, as if she was trying to shield the small human woman from the roomful of strangers. Remarkable, Admiral Korath said quietly. They are protecting you. Dr. Morrison smiled and gently stroked Scout's fur. Of course they are. Just like I would protect them if they were in danger. But this defies all military logic, the Admiral continued, his red eyes wide with confusion. You have made yourself vulnerable to these apex predators, yet somehow that vulnerability has turned them into your guardians. Jake stepped closer to his mother and the animals. Freedom immediately hopped from his arm to his shoulder, making soft clicking sounds that Jake seemed to understand. She says she likes the gravity on this station, he translated for the amazed audience. It's a little lighter than Earth, so flying is easier for her. Dr. Vross, who had been frantically taking readings with his various instruments, looked up from his data. Admiral, I am detecting something extraordinary. The stress hormones in all three animals are at extremely low levels, despite being in an unfamiliar environment surrounded by potential threats. That's because they trust us, Dr. Morrison explained simply. They know we won't let anything bad happen to them. Professor Zethkara activated her recording device. Dr. Morrison, for our official records, could you explain exactly how your species forms these bonds with apex predators? Dr. Morrison thought for a moment, absently scratching Ribbon under her chin. The enormous snake made a soft purring sound that vibrated through her whole body. Well, she said, it starts with respect. We don't try to dominate them or control them. We learn what they need to be healthy and happy, and we provide it. We give them food, shelter, medical care, and companionship. But surely there must be some form of training involved, Admiral Korath pressed, some way to ensure they do not revert to predatory behavior. Jake shook his head. It's not about training them to be different. It's about understanding that they were never really the monsters everyone thought they were. Scout suddenly stood up and walked over to Admiral Korath. The massive Krillian admiral took a step backward, his hand moving instinctively toward his weapon. Don't move, Dr. Morrison said calmly. He's just curious about you. Scout sniffed at Admiral Korath's armored leg, then sat down and looked up at the alien's face with intelligent yellow eyes. Very slowly, the wolf's tail began to wag. He likes you, Jake said with surprise. That's weird. He's usually pretty shy around strangers. Admiral Korath stared down at the wolf in amazement. It shows no fear. Why should he? Dr. Morrison asked. You haven't given him any reason to be afraid. Very carefully, Admiral Korath reached down with one armored hand and touched Scout's head. The wolf's tail wagged faster, and he made a soft whining sound of contentment. This is incredible, Admiral Korath whispered. I have been a warrior for over 60 years, and this apex predator is treating me like a friend. Dr. Vross was practically vibrating with excitement as he took more readings. Admiral, the wolf's brain chemistry has shifted into a full bonding response. In the space of 30 seconds, it has decided to accept you as part of its social group. But how is that possible? Because, Professor Zethkara said, her glowing patches bright with understanding, humans have taught us something we never realized before. The predator-prey relationship is not the only possible relationship between species. Commander Parker stepped forward. What we're seeing here is cooperation instead of competition. Friendship instead of fear. Humans didn't conquer apex predators. We joined their families. Admiral Korath was still kneeling next to Scout, who had now rolled over on his back to get his belly rubbed. The sight of the galaxy's most feared military commander gently petting a deadly apex predator was almost too strange to believe. Dr. Morrison, Admiral Korath said without looking up from Scout. I came here because I thought humans might be weaponizing these creatures. But what you have shown me is something entirely different. What's that, Admiral? You have shown me that the entire galaxy has been wrong about the nature of strength. He stood up slowly and Scout rolled back over to sit beside him. We thought survival meant being the biggest, the strongest, the most dangerous. But you survived by being the most trustworthy. Dr. Morrison nodded. We learned a long time ago that you can accomplish more with friendship than you can with fear. And now, Professor Zethkara added, you have given us the possibility of a different kind of galactic community, one based on cooperation rather than competition. Admiral Korath looked around the room at all the scientists, diplomats, and military officers who had witnessed the demonstration. I came here to investigate a potential threat. Instead, I have discovered hope. He turned to Commander Parker. I will be recommending to the Galactic Council that Earth's quarantine status be immediately lifted. More than that, I want to propose a new initiative, the first interspecies wildlife sanctuary in galactic history. Jake's eyes lit up. Really? You want to create a sanctuary in space? Not just in space, Admiral Korath said, his red eyes glowing with excitement. I want to invite humans to help other species learn what you have learned, to teach us how to make friends instead of enemies. Dr. Morrison stood up, with ribbons still draped around her shoulders and Scout pressing against her side. Admiral, we would be honored to help. 3 months later, Jake stood on the observation deck of the new sanctuary station, watching as transport ships arrived from dozens of different worlds. Each ship brought both animals and caretakers from different species, all coming to learn. The human approach to interspecies cooperation. Scout was lying at his feet, now a permanent resident of the station, and the unofficial ambassador for Earth animals. Freedom was perched nearby, watching the arriving ships with keen interest. And somewhere in the sanctuary's climate-controlled habitat, Ribbon was teaching a group of young alien scientists that not all large predators were dangerous. Commander Parker joined Jake at the window. Any regrets about becoming famous as the boy who befriended apex hunters? Jake scratched Scout behind the ears and smiled. Are you kidding? This is the best job in the galaxy. Outside the window, a ship from the Centauri colonies was docking. Jake could see Quinda in the passenger section, along with several other students from Professor Zethkara's class. They were all coming to learn how to make friends with creatures they had once feared. Scout, quote, tail wagged as he sensed Jake's happiness. Freedom made a soft chirping sound that meant she was content. And somewhere in the distance, Jake could hear the deep, rumbling purr of a tiger, who had just been reunited with her human family after months of separation. The galaxy had spent thousands of years learning how to fight apex predators. Now thanks to a young human with some very unusual pets, they were finally learning how to live with them instead. And that, Jake thought as he watched another ship full of hopeful students arrive, was a much better way to explore the universe.